And then there were 6. The first stage of OWCS EMEA playoffs is just around the corner, and we got 2 spots on the line from this region to go on to the OWCS LAN event being held in Hangzhou, China. And right now, things are about as open as they've ever been since this region came into existence in OWCS last year. And just like in the NA video that you saw previously, today I'm going to give you a brief rundown of how the EMEA stage went, give you my personal ranking of which teams have the best odds to make it to the China LAN event, and in the end, I'll give you my final prediction as to who I think makes it through. If all that sounds good to you, let's dive straight into this thing. So in EMEA, it was a massive cluster of confusion during the qualifiers. Things went a lot differently than how many of us thought it would go. Just look at the standings, man. It's honestly crazy, and it feels like a lot of teams are currently in the mix. On paper, just about anybody from the top 6 outside of maybe one team should, keyword should, be capable of going to the LAN in China. I can't say the same for Vision and Sakura, who just weren't ready for primetime. They'll be facing relegation in hopes of making it back here someday, but for the other 6, it's up in the air. We're squared away at 0. Regular season means nothing, and it all comes down to the next 2 weeks. Looking into some of the storylines, obviously we've got to start with Virtus.pro. For a team like VP, you've got to be feeling really good right now. While I wouldn't say they're totally unstoppable, they're definitely the closest to it over in Europe. They're the only undefeated team in all of the West as it currently stands, with only one game needing a map 5 finish. The beauty of this team is how everybody seems to hold their own weight. People from all over the world with 2 Korean imports, but no real impact on the synergy. Shockwave and Vestola have continued to look like top-tier European superstars. It's an elite core with a lot of experience, but it goes a lot beyond them, and that's because of one man, JWoo, the most underlooked acquisition quite possibly of the entire offseason. We saw flashes of his brilliance on Poker Face last year, but the man's taken it to a completely different level here in 2025. He's the man that everybody's been talking about in EU, and with how he's playing right now, he's an early favorite for regional MVP. Him and Shockwave have been a perfect duo. This is a serious group of players portraying a very high level of confidence. They've constantly beaten the toughest foes convincingly. They look like they're the best out there, and frankly, they know it too. They showed some cracks at the end against Qadsiah, but it's mostly been smooth sailing so far. I'm a little worried that things could change quickly here in the playoffs, but as of right now, this team is undoubtedly the one to beat out of EU. They definitely played above my expectations, and I'm hella proud of them. Speaking of teams that have went way above and beyond, there's Team Peps. The real team of the hour, man. A team that I honestly had no confidence in whatsoever find themselves sitting in 2nd place. Nowhere even close to the relegation mark that I had them at. I owe Peps a major apology. I was not familiar with their game. They beat a lot of good teams this stage. They've proven they're more than legit at this point. And a lot of it comes down to the likes of exoDIAL, Zerion, and Icenam. All of them have gone above and beyond for their team. Having this 3-level threat has been massive for them in-game. They may not have all the flashy names of other squads out there, but they have a lot of the important details worked out. Some other top teams have struggled to find their identity, and I think that's been a huge reason why the Peps have been as good as they have. They haven't had to worry about that. They have that stuff figured out. They know who they are. Now it's about pushing through when it matters the most, and hopefully for their sake, praying that exoDIAL can stay healthy. Then we move on to the second partner team, Gen.G, who managed to get 3rd place. Right now, they're in a very weird spot. It's a difficult team to get a read on. A 5-2 stage would indicate they did pretty well for themselves, and at times they definitely showed that. Son on Top Dragon had major questions about how they do if they have to try and fill in as the team's hit skin, seeing as they don't have any other options, but that concern is all but dissipated so far, and damn has my boy Mag looked good out there. This man has been fiending on the wrecking ball. This team looks like a well-oiled machine. The talent is there, and when they put 2 and 2 together, they're pretty scary for just about anybody in the region. The issue, as usual, seems to be the good old crusty crack pipe. You thought that you could escape him just because he went to EU, huh? You are mistaken. This team, just like in typical crusty fashion, behaves very weirdly. Every week is different. In one, they're a contender. The next, they're dropping maps to teams they absolutely shouldn't. A lot of growing pains for sure. But one thing is certain with this Gen.G team. When they're on, they are capable of being top 2. Genuinely, I feel like right now, just based off of the results, that the biggest enemy to this team happens to be themselves. Can they hold on for 2 weeks and not let the crack pipe take control? Let's find out. But honestly, the most intriguing EMEA team for me so far has probably been Qadsiah, the 4th place team. Their roster had some great talent coming into this year, and it seemed like top 4 was doable, and damn it, they made it happen. They went 4-3, but I'd say they finished pretty strong. They got off to a rocky start, but since then we've seen some meaningful progress from the squad. As this stage has progressed, they've become more and more sure of who they are as a team. Certain pieces like Checkmate and Lavda have settled into their roles on this squad, and having Landon there for the playmaking is just the extra cherry on top. I've grown to really like this team. The amount of growth that they've shown this stage could be very useful in a playoff environment where you're bound to face adversity. Taking those lessons with you could be quite valuable. Oh, and now that I think about it, taking Virtus.pro to a map 5 certainly helps with your stocks too. Moving on to the 5 spot, there's something crazy we have to talk about. The fact that we're 4 teams into this, and there's still so much more to discuss. Because Twisted Minds, the final partner team, are in a very similar boat to AQ as they find themselves in 5th place. A rough start, but they're starting to come into their own here late. This team had a tank problem early on, and they addressed it ASAP, going from Hottie to TVNT. It has made a pretty notable difference. The team looks a lot more comfortable, there's a bit more of a stable presence to them, and nobody feels that lost anymore. The team's finally doing the right thing. The issue is that it hasn't always translated into the scoreboard yet. They have yet to execute against any of the truly big names. A majority of their wins have come against the weakest rosters. There's reason to have doubts, but at the same time, there's one counter-argument. They have courts. That alone might be enough, right? It's a very weird team though. They have a lot of upside. They could also flop. They're one that could end up being the dark horse of this tournament, just knowing that people are starting to forget about them because of that rough start. Speaking of people starting to forget about you though, and in some cases not being good enough, there's the 6th seed, aka the Ultimates. What a letdown. If you were to tell me a team with KSA, Kevster, and Twilight on it would be 2-5 and a non-threat in the playoffs a month ago, I would have called you insane. But here we are, sitting here wondering together if the players on this team are washed. They failed to put it all together so far. The Ultimates are showing us that having a bunch of names does not mean guaranteed success. The Ultimates have been a strange watch this year. Sometimes you see the flashes, but for whatever reason, when it comes down to the pivotal team fights with the game on the line, they just can't win them. When the game is in their own hands, they make the wrong choices and get thoroughly outplayed. And just to make matters worse, this team lacks a real identity somehow. There still seems to be a lot of confusion about what works and what doesn't. There's issues at basically every level. Sadly, KSA has not been the most comfortable in the current meta setup, and the results speak for themselves. Recently, they've gotten Chase a lot more involved, and I think he's made some good moves on Ball and Winston to help this team trend in the right direction, but they still don't feel like much of a hazard team at all. The tank swap may have come too late into this thing, and the same could be said for their supports. Twilight didn't see any action until like week 3, and now suddenly they're trying to experiment with what works there, and it still feels like they're trying to figure out the formula. From what we've seen, Twilight and Sky seems to be their strongest combination, but with the high demand for Lucio, Brig, and Juno, this only gets you so far. And just to make things even worse, the DPS line hasn't always held their own weight. Kai in particular has really struggled against other top hit scans. They really need him to step up his game, but he just hasn't so far, mostly being unable to hit the big shots. There are some major issues with the Ultimate's current regime and game plan. It's a work in progress still. And being this late into the stage, being a work in progress is not acceptable. People need to realize they are starting in the losers bracket. I repeat, this team is already one game away from elimination. A team of this stature being in that position is insane. It does not sit right. The Ultimates have one massive cloud of doubt over them, and one has to wonder if it's too little too late. When it comes to navigating this tournament, making predictions is very difficult. The top of EU is one big mess. A lot of teams have real opportunity. A lot of outcomes feel possible. Nobody truly feels safe, even going as far as saying that for Virtus.pro. And I only say that because they're definitely not invincible, and teams of this region have been insanely unpredictable. I'm of the belief that no outcome should be considered surprising at this point. I don't know who's picking who in the bracket or anything, but here's my honest ranking of these teams and my prediction. So number one, as of right now, certainly has to be Virtus.pro. I mean, they're undefeated. They felt like the best team overall. They haven't gotten pushed all that much, and it seems like they just have things figured out. The meta seems favorable for them. They all seem really comfortable out there. They're getting such great contributions across the board from all of their team members. The coaching seems to be the right fit as well. Virtus.pro are just playing really well. They have the best read on things to me, and I'm expecting them to be favored to either win the tournament or at least get second. Who I rank as number two, I mean, it's just ridiculously up in the air. Everybody's so inconsistent after Virtus.pro, but I think I'm going to stick Qadsiah in there, believe it or not. I know it may sound crazy. I mean, they're only 4-3. They've had a couple of embarrassing losses, but again, it felt like a lot of that happened early on, and since then, the play has looked a lot more clean. I like the flexibility a lot of their players possess. Checkmate has already played so well in so many big games. He's bounced back a lot this year. I think Labda's still getting better and better as time goes on this hit scan, not playing so much Pharah anymore. And Landon, when the game is put in his hands, has proven to be a very clutch playmaker. And I don't know if I want to go against that. I feel like they've been one of the most consistent squads as of late. So I think they've got a good chance of making it through. Then right now at 3, I think you at least have to go with Peps. I don't love them that much personally. I think that they have played well, but there's a lot of room for things to go very wrong in this upcoming tournament, knowing some of the names they're going up against. But you gotta pay respect to them. They have everything figured out. That could be a big advantage even here in a playoff environment. They have experienced players, some that are very hungry, underappreciated players even. It really just comes down to if the meta can stay in their favor and if they can adjust if things start to go differently. I don't know, man. I mean, I guess exoDio's health also could play into this. I think it's like a hand or a wrist thing. I don't remember exactly, but he's missed some time here and there. I'm hoping he can be healthy enough. Something else to definitely watch out for that could heavily affect this team's stocks. But right now, because of how they've performed as of late, I think they should at least be top 3. At the 4 spot, I feel pretty comfortable going with Gen.G. They should be around like the halfway mark because they're so weird, because they have these crazy ups and downs all the time. When these guys are on, I feel like they can punch up to literally top 1 even, just because like when they have the right game plan, when they execute it, they feel absolutely terrifying. Mag, again, can be a menace when he's not denied, when he can do his thing on the wrecking ball. And I absolutely love what I've seen from Sauna on Top Dragon. They look like a top tier DPS line for this region. But I don't know how I feel about the supports at times. Sometimes Crispy makes some uncharacteristic mistakes. He's looked a lot better recently though, which helps. But I feel like compared to other top teams, maybe their support line won't be able to punch above. We'll have to see there. But I don't know how much confidence I can have in them because they are so up and down. I don't know if they can stitch it together for 2 straight weeks, hence why I only have them at 4. 5 right now is Twisted Minds, but they're basically interchangeable with the likes of Gen.G, and I'd even say Peps. They're all around the same level to me. Twisted Minds, I never know what I'm going to get with them. It's been a pretty bizarre start for those guys, but, you know, TVNT, I think switching out Hottie for him was a really good decision, and that type of stability could be good for them in the clutch. Like, they just have to go and play around courts and hope that everything else falls into place. I don't know if it's going to be like last year where they can just make a push anyway. This year, they may end up getting denied of a big tournament for once, but we'll have to see. I don't love them, but I also think there's some high upside just knowing some of the names on that squad. And lastly, at 6 is the Ultimates, who somehow, someway have the worst odds of making it through into the LAN. I mean, they literally have not beaten any team that is above them. They've only beaten Vision and Sakura. That's it. They got reverse swept by Peps. I mean, that was a winnable game, and they've played close against Gen.G and a couple of other squads, but they're still losing those games. And in some cases, they're still getting severely blown out. How could I have any confidence in a team that feels so lost out there, you know? With the talent alone, there's always at least some kind of chance, I'd say. But right now, they feel significantly further behind than anybody else, and they have to have the worst chances. It's crazy to say this, but I don't think they're winning any games. I think they're going to get eliminated first round, and it will be a major slap in the face for them and their fans. As for who I think is actually going to win this thing, though, again, I'm staying firm that Virtus.pro get number 1. Maybe they have to go through a loser's bracket run. It's possible they get upset just knowing that they're overdue for a loss, but knowing their strengths and weaknesses, they feel like the most well-balanced, the most confident, most competent team right now. So I think they're at least getting top 2 bare minimum. I have them winning EU. And I'm going to stick with Qadsiah to get number 2. A bit of a hot take maybe, but that number 2 spot in particular feels very wide open. It could be Peps, could be Gen.G, could be Twisted Minds. Anybody could take this. I mean, honestly, at this point, you could pick a name out of a hat, and you probably have a better chance than me. But I'll go with Qadsiah for the spicy take. I think that they're starting to catch fire at the right time. Maybe they get a bit of confidence after almost beating VP. So that's what I'm going to go with. I think compared to a lot of these other teams, there's a bit less of an opportunity for things to go really wrong. Peps have alexyOWL and his health and maybe collapsing randomly. Gen.G, they have the crusty crack pipe. Twisted Minds are still figuring some things out. Ultimates are completely lost in the sauce at this point. This is their opportunity. They felt like a bit more of a stable presence compared to those guys, and I'm going to ride with them. Sometimes you got to ride with the hot hand. That's a lesson I've learned from esports over the years. Some may say that means I should go with Peps, but I don't have as much of a belief in them as other people. I think there's room for things to go wrong. I'm going with AQ, baby. I think they'll get the revenge if they play Peps, and they end up going to LAN. But that's basically all I've got for you when it comes to EMEA. That's a rundown of how things went during the regular season, where I rank these teams heading into the playoffs, and who I think is going to win in the playoff bracket. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'd love to hear where you go differently. And if you enjoyed this content and you want more Overwatch esports content just like this here on the channel, give the video a like and subscribe if you're new. I've been ATP, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.